Hey everyone, this is another horrible podcast. I'm Kyle Hardigan. I'm joined with my brother Mitch Hardigan.
Hello.
This podcast is basically two brothers talking about horror films from a different genre every week. So, Mitch, do you want to introduce yourself and just kind of explain how our intros are going to work?
Okay, so before we just made a suggestion, just did that, but now we're going to have a selection of a genre at the beginning of every episode.
We're going to be drawing different genres from a hat. So this week it's my turn, so I'm going to be picking a genre and then at the end of the podcast, I'll give Mitchell my suggestion. So wait till the end to find out what the movie's going to be.
Okay, but first we're going to select it. You hear it? All right, you select it.
Up. All right, I'm going to go to the bottom. Find
a good one. Out of a Cat in the Hat.
All right, let's see. Do we give me a drum roll? And animated horror movies. Ooh, I wonder what I'll do for that one.
So wait until the end for Kyle's suggestion of an animated horror film. I don't know what could it be. Could it be Paranorman? Could it be... I don't know about many animated horror movies.
Could be Nightmare. I don't know. I'll find a good one.
I don't know. But as for now, switch gears and we'll be talking about Tremors after the theme.
Enjoy the podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of another horrible podcast. And today we will be discussing the 1990 film starring Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward, and it is called Tremors.
What'd you think?
I love Tremors. It is... So, ever since 1975, one of the biggest movies coming out in 1975 was Jaws. And ever since Jaws came out, they even did themselves with Jaws 2. They made Jaws clones like hell. And most of them are pretty bad. Now, we've actually some of the greatest movies of the 90s ended up being actually great Jaws clones. I think the 90s had a specific type of tone that went with these monster movies that brought it back to like that 1950s fun enjoyment of a big monster. Especially the... what they're called graboids in that's the term for the monster in these movies.
In Tremors, yeah.
Yeah, and they're basically another name for the movie was land shark.
Yeah, originally what we were reading is that the guys that wrote the movie, S.S. Wilson and Brent Maddock, were basically in the desert, and they're like, what if they were like stuck they were on top of a rock, and they're basically like, what if we couldn't escape? And they thought up of an idea and called them land sharks.
And which kind of works to the Jaws-ness. And what I talk about the Jaws clone, it's not just a big monster. It's also this idea of collectivism to destroy the monster. Or the monster is coming to a town, and we have to work together to destroy it. And I think it works so well because you see it's based in the small town in Perfection in the Sierra Nevada Valley.
I mean, the name Perfection just makes you think of like a 50s town, right?
Yeah. And it's like it's basically like there's, it's the Wild West out there kind of still. There's these two, Fred Ward and Kevin Bacon play these two guys who, one's an older guy who's trying to, they're just tired of doing manual labor. And when you watch these guys and you hear them talk, you feel like they're just regular people, and you're invested in what really makes you care about the movie is how the characters and how it puts character first. All the characters of Perfection are super interesting, but they're also grounded in reality enough, and that really adds to when you're watching the movie. I don't know, so many horror movies don't care about their characters. They think we just need to scare the audience by killing off random people, and what happens is you get characters who are boring, terrible, and not interesting, so why would you care if they died? In this movie, you know expectations and wants, and the want of Fred Ward and Kevin Bacon is to get out. They're tired of doing manual labor. But also Kevin Bacon has unrealistic expectations. He wants like a girlfriend who is like a 10 out of 10 model, but like, he's living in the desert working on, he's not but you also realize the hard work it takes to meet goals and to problem solve. And that's what this movie's
I was going to go back. Yeah, I was going to say it definitely, I saw a review, or basically it's what they call, like in the 1950s, all those monster movies that came out, like the feature creatures, or the creature features that came out. Basically, like the Blob, like the 30-story woman, basically movies where these giant creatures attack the town, and it's the job of a small group of people to go fight it. And then that movie, this one came out in the 90s, but it definitely is a huge callback to that era of... Yeah. And like what I was saying, like perfection, the name of the town's Perfection, all the characters are usually like, they're older Southerners. They're just kind of goes back to that feeling of those movies, which I liked a lot.
Yeah. And let's get back to the plot more. The film, it begins and these two characters are just trying to figure out, they're trying to leave, they're trying to get out, and they run into a grad student who's studying seismographs.
Oh, yeah, do you want to get... So, yeah, the two main characters we meet is Kevin Valentine McKee. He's played by Kevin Bacon, and Earl Bassett, played by... Is that Fred Ward?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's Fred. Yeah, and they run into Rhonda, who is like a graduate student, and she's like... studying seismographs, and they're starting to notice weird things going on,
like under the ground. Yeah.
Under the ground, and then they come upon and they find that one of their friends from the town, in a great just scene of like, ooh, what's going on? Because he's up on a telephone pole, and they said that he died of dehydration because he was too afraid to get down. Like there's something under the ground. Yeah, and it's very cool that the because you're just like, ooh, you're like shocked, and they end up thinking Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward almost take on, because it's just a small town, there's no one really there, there's not really a police officer, all they have is a general store owned by Victor Wong, the actor Victor Wong. I don't know his character's name. What was it again? I think
Victor Wong. He's Walter Chang.
Chang's convenience store, and they're hanging out, they're just trying to live day by day. There's two survivalists played by Reba McEntire. Yes.
McEntire, yeah.
The country singer. And the guy actually ends up being the main character of the later movies.
Who's that again?
That's her husband, the survivalist guy. He wears an Atlantic Hawks hat.
Whatever his name is. I don't know.
He's really cool. He's the guy, like they're survivalists and they have a bunch of guns and stuff. And I love that the movie doesn't just... They use that stuff, but it doesn't just turn into, oh, we're just going to go and shoot it and there's going to be a big action scene. Like, multiple scenes, it's about them just figuring out what this thing is along with us and learning how to solve and to defeat it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What's super cool about the movie is there's not just like, it's almost like split up into a bunch of different situations where, like, early when they first meet the Tremors, they're stuck on these rocks, and then they have to figure out how to get off these rocks to get back to the town. And then once they're in the town, they have to figure out how to stay high enough. So it's split up into scenes where every time they come up with a solution to beat the monster finds a new way to beat it. So they keep on having to test their skills. And like what Mitch was saying, the two survivalists, they keep on having to find new ways and new, like, little gadgets to help them fight the graboids.
Exactly, and one of the good things is they, like, for example, when they're at first in the town, it's about figuring out, okay, what can these things do? Like, they realize they're strong enough to get through and to grab one of their cars, and they actually grab one of the cars while they're jumping over the rocks. Well, they figure out how to jump off rocks and jump from one rock to another by using these poles that they've got, so they don't, step on the ground and the monster can't get them. It's really interesting. It's like it's watching a fun game version of Don't Touch the Floor is Lava.
It's definitely, and that's what I will say. It's definitely a fun movie. It's a horror movie, but it's definitely leaning more towards the action horror. So you get really the music, how the characters act. It's a little silly. It's a little over the top. But it's fun. It makes it an interesting... It's a cool... I will say, though, we were talking... I'm going to go back to the old man when they first... the first mystery of what these monsters are, and they're discovering it. That's a legitimately creepy scene, because you see this like husk of a person on top of this, like hiding up on this telephone thing, and they see him, and he's just like this old man, and he's just covered in like, he's sunburned, his lips are cracked, and he died of thirst. And it's like a legitimately, you're like, if I can imagine watching this movie the first time being like, all right, what's going on? Like, it's creepy. And then as it goes on, it gets a little bit more actiony, but it's still an underlying tone of like, these monsters are scary.
Yeah, and they're scary because and the reason it's funny and fun and enjoyable is because you're so on these sides of these characters. They're just joking around with each other, like, you know, but using all different skills. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when they've discovered that basically as it goes along, at first you don't see the monster. It's done through like perspective camera, or people are just grabbed out of the ground.
You were talking about Jaws, they do POV Jaws stuff.
Yeah, POV Jaws stuff, which is classic Jaws stuff, but as the characters learn about the monster, you get more revealed of the monster, and it's such a good design. It's one of my favorite designs for a monster. It looks realistic and real for what it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so they had a friend, Ron, I think his name was, Ron Underwood, and basically he worked for National Geographic as a documentary director.
Oh, okay, so
and then actually since his knowledge of zoology helped him. They've developed the monster, so it's not just like some scary monster. It's like they legitimately wanted to make it like, if this was a real thing, what would it look like? So it has these, I mean, you see in the movie, they have these weird feelers that they'll stick out of the ground.
And you get to see how those feelers are just by one of the feelers. It's they have this big giant mouth, and inside of that mouth is 3 tongues that are almost sentient, that have like
little wormies.
They have their little own mouths, and they grab onto stuff, and that's what they call them, grabbers. They try to grab and bite and pull you in to the big trap. They're almost, it's such an interesting design.
Sandworm,
but it makes sense because they're sandworms, so they have these beaks almost that shoot through, and these little spikes on the side that make them able to just
push through
swim
the dirt.
through.
Yeah.
Which another interesting thing, just total side note, but me and Kyle were watching the first episode of The Mandalorian of the next season.
Yeah.
Very Tremors-esque. Just saying, they use bombs to destroy it. It eats a bomb, but So if anything shows the power of such a good idea like this, because there has been sandworms and other stuff,
like the book Dune and the movie Dune. That came out in the '60s. So the idea of it was already there.
But they really just make it its own monster. And the fun part is when they find like the little feeler around the thing and they're like studying it. They're all just trying to figure out what it is and what its abilities are.
Which is interesting because the sandworm is also doing the same. It's basically, you're watching the freaky worm try to figure out them, so he'll move around the houses, he'll feel their vibrations, and at the same exact time, they're figuring it out too. Which
is one of the big scenes, is when you think they've figured out, like they tricked one of the graboids to go towards an aqueduct, to chase towards an aqueduct, so when it hits through a wall, and you can see it pop through the wall. And that's such a good, fun, such a good design and idea, is that they're underground, so you can see parts of them. You don't have to see their whole body, but you can see the beautiful front, and then like study it and be like, oh, it's got 3 feelers. And then the seismologist is like, oh, there's, we can feel that there's 3 underground. It's like different skills are being used. And what leads to one of my favorite scenes where they first get to kill one, is they're on the rocks. They bounce from rock to rock, but this time they bring I'm gonna figure that guy's name. He has a bomb, and he gives them a bomb. It's the survivalist guy, and he gives a bomb.
Melvin Plug, is that the guy?
Yeah.
Bobby Jacoby.
Yeah. He's the one who he hands them a bomb, and with a little, which he uses as for a cannon, and the Fred Ward knows how to use it as a lasso.
Actually, I take it back. Michael Gross plays the survivalist.
Michael Gross,
and he actually ends up being like the leading man in the whole series.
That's why I want to get his name. He ends up being like the leading man, because he's like a survivalist gun shooter
of like the rest of the Tremors. Yeah,
but there's a big scene where he goes off and he tries to shoot some of them, and he realizes they're using so much ammo, so they can't just shoot it, which is so good, because it's like, oh, I'm tired of just, we'll just grab guns and kill it. It's like that whole idea that guns are what answers the problem. What happens is he uses the bomb, hands it to Fred Ward, who knows how to lasso, so they throw the bomb on the ground and kind of move it so the tremor goes up and grabs it and eats it, and then blows up. And there's great scenes of just like the guck coming on everybody. Yeah. It's a fun.
That's what I was gonna say. I wanted to talk about the ambiance and the feeling of the whole movie is really, like, I don't know, what do you think? It was really fun. It's like, it's an action movie, it's an adventure movie. The music is great.
What makes it fun is that it's not about keeping the characters separate from each other. The characters aren't always questioning each other, which is a total, a more darker tone is something there. But the light tone makes you want to be on these sides of these people, but you're also like on the same way trying to figure it all out. But there's still a horror there. There's still an element of like, I get my feet tingle because it's like you can't touch the ground. Oh, get up on a roof, and they're like caving in roofs and everything. You see the effect of everything, and it's from the beginning shot of someone dying from dehydration is so horrific that you're immediately on the side of these just salt of the earth people who did nothing wrong, or just trying to live their lives out on land, and you care about every one of them, and you want to see them succeed. And they talk, and you see Kevin Bacon learn more about his friend.
That's
and
they
what I learn more about each other.
Compared to most kind of like movies like this, I feel like there's a surprising amount of character development. Like what Mitch was saying, the two, like Kevin Bacon's character and Fred Willard, like in the beginning of the movie, it's like they're trying to get out of the town. They're basically tired of working these menial jobs of the town. They're like, they're gonna get out, and they're funny. They actually surprisingly have I really like the rapport between Kevin Bakes and the other guy. They're just like, I don't know, it's fun. Kevin Bacon, I was making fun of this whole movie. He was just the most spastic, over the top person, but it works for the character, and it's just fun. It's just such a good movie.
Yeah, and when they and in the end they have almost the power. They know what they're doing, and they're able to trick and figure out what these graboids can do, and they're able to use bombs to blow them up.
Yeah.
And it's just the journey till you get there. It's just you're waiting, and you're trying to see, and you're trying to figure out these things. It's just so original, but also takes in all the stuff from the past. And actually, I think it adds to now how creature feature fun movies are. If you think of Jurassic Park, very similar to something like this, where, in the sense that it's a group of people who you care about those characters. It's less about the big giant. It's fun to see the big giant dinosaurs, but the best part is seeing the characters interact with it. And the same thing happens in this one with the, just being able to see it in the sand, and they really use their budget well to create, honestly, a convincing monster. And they do the right thing by not showing it right away, but also understanding how well done and how well made it is. Because when you see it slicking around there, it makes you go, woo. You look at it, you're like, I don't want to walk anywhere. Well, I want to be on the top of something all the time.
I liked the little tongue things, because they're these little snakes. There's little like snakes with no eyes, but then they actually added like goop into their mouths, so it's like they'll touch things and they'll leave like a slime residue, and I'm like, oh, that's really like, they definitely didn't need to do that. They could have gone the route of just like, they get the point, they don't need to be gross, but they literally make them these little wet, like,
yeah. There's a great scene where Kevin Bacon is he's like on the ground, and he's found like a little space where they can't find him, but all the crawlers kind of come up and they start to go around. He has to move his foot, and it's real. It's there. You know what I mean? It's so tangible. Nowadays they make them CGI, and it's like, what's the point?
Yeah,
you know
that's
what I
the
mean?
thing. It becomes. We were talking about this because we brought up. Remember, we were talking about The Mandalorian, and it was like how they animated it. They tried to make it as. It's just like, I'm trying to think of. It's just how when it's real and you can tell that it's real, it adds a little more stakes to it. I think if you because I think nowadays we're so tired of, we've seen a million different CGI monsters, and it's like, yeah, they're scary, but like, it's when it actually feels real, when it becomes like legitimately scary, where it's like, even though it's a fun kind of campy movie, the music has some cool adventure times. Like, the monster freaks you out.
Yeah, it's just I'd say this is a great horror movie to put on for anyone. Like, you can watch it at any age.
It's our mom's favorite like movie. Like, she introduced us to Tremors, and our mom is like not a horror person at all.
Yeah, and you can tell because I think my mom really likes it, and a lot of people, because it's teaching. Kevin Bacon is learning about being. You kind of learn and see him grow up and start to learn, and then also, you know, you learn that he's looking for these grand things. They're looking for these grand things, but you realize that it was all there in perfection. All the people and their friends and the people that you learned about. It's just, it shows how sometimes tragedy can actually make a town work together and understand each other. And I think that's a beautiful message.
Yeah, I like how deep. It's definitely very. It's a silly fun movie, but there is. We were actually looking at it. We're like, hey, this is actually like, there is a not. The themes in it aren't like bad. They're good. Like, they legitimately have like.
Well, I think it gets the problems with it come in more of just that it's, you know, I think at a certain point the scares go away, and a lot of it, you know, once you see the monster, there's a lot of parts of this movie that you know, you can tell that they could have gone a little deeper with some of the characters, and, you know, like, it gets to a point where they're just shooting it, which is fun. It's a fun, that's part of the fun, but it's a
popcorn movie.
Yeah, it's an adventure popcorn movie, but it has, the reason it's lasts so long is because it has these great characters and great actors who bring to life, and it feels real. It feels realistic to their situation, and
it's, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but it's just great chemistry, I think. Like, maybe not the writing is going to be always the best, but they knew how to play the characters in a way that felt like they were actually friends and they're actually in a town together. It's just, yeah, so it's like you feel the community feel of the actors, which is great.
And just you get a, I think screenwriters should look at this as like a start for a lot of how these movies should be made, because it you know, I think that great horror comes from it puts all the elements together that's needed. I think the only thing I didn't like straight out was some of the score. They had someone come in and rewrite the score for a lot of parts, because sometimes it can be this like country western thing, and sometimes
sometimes it's an adventure score, sometimes it's western, sometimes it's scary. They needed I think there was a lot of different people that had an idea about what the movie was going to be.
Yeah, like anything.
Yeah, which most is saying. So it's that's the only kind of criticism I guess I would give it.
Yeah, and anything. I mean, there's a point to, you know, where the movie kind of has already figured out what the graboids are, and you can kind of tell that they're going to win. You never feel like they're going to lose. I think that's one of my issues with it. That's why you kind of feel more of a fun adventure vibe instead of like I think at times they could have ramped up the tension. In a second, you know, and it's hard to do that while they're all, you know, sometimes they're just standing on roofs and yelling at each other. And that's why the character work is so important. And I think the later movies really lost that. So you can see...
I was going to say the sequels definitely took... Like... They didn't focus on what made Tremors good. They only kind of focused it on the monsters and like...
the only one I suggest seeing is Tremors 2, because they evolve, the graboids evolve to like these little walking things. And it still has Fred Ward in it. And they give him like a love interest. It's actually kind of nice. I like that one. That one has the same type of tone.
It has the essence of it a little more, you think?
Yeah, well, it's still the same. I think that one's quality.
Yeah, I've never actually seen that one, so maybe I'll check that one out.
Yeah. Let me think.
What else did you like about it?
I'm trying to think of anything else, because we kind of spoke on the characters and the monster and the terrain.
Yeah, I was gonna
score.
Mm-hmm. They did. That's another thing that's a good job of. I think they could have focused on it a little more, but the idea of it being in a desert, and they're very, very secluded because it's a tiny town in the middle of this giant.
It can sometimes be visually, like when you're not having the scenes, the graboids, or the scene where they're jumping around, which is majority of the movie, which is good. It really uses those scenes. You get a lot of situations. Just at times, it can be visually boring, and I think that's just the direction. It's hard to also direct and do, but there's a lot of just wide shots showing wide, in broad daylight, that I think, again, with adding more perspective shots and being a little more cinematic in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, it can have kind of I think it's the age of it, but it's also, you can tell that they kind of focus the budget on the graboids and the characters and that kind of part of it.
Yeah.
But I think so at times I find myself, being, I crave a visual experience as well, and I think sometimes movies can lose that. But it has a lot to juggle, so I understand.
Yeah, I was going to say, going back to Jaws a lot, Jaws has the same idea. It's a bright movie, and it's not like the most like dark horror thing, but it's like they did it and took in ways where it's like where people love the POV of it and just how it's shot. Like they built tension more, and I think that's the only thing Tremors could have done a little bit better of, where it's like maybe stretch out the time frame of not knowing what the monster is would have been cool, because it's like once you see it, it doesn't take away from the scariness of it. It's just more the mystery in the beginning of the movie me and Mitchell liked, where they were slowly unraveling. They'd find a dead body, they'd find a missing, like a hole in the ground, they'd find a missing couple, like there was a couple building a house in the beginning, and they get killed. That's such a sad scene again too, because it's like this sweet old couple building a home, and they're like, oh, we'll finally retire, and then they both get killed by the worm, and you're like, no!
Yeah, it's like, and that's the thing. That's and I think that scene really shows you're empathizing with these people, and you also anyone can empathize with. I don't know. I my feet get tingly, and I don't like those little things running around. Like I don't want that. I do not want that. And it's like it's something that can sneak up on you, and just the design of it is so good. I just suggest everyone to take a look at this.
Nice. Are we getting to the end of our...
We are getting to the end.
Okay, so I guess, do you want to end with your... What do you want to do? 10 out of 10 rating?
Yeah, 10 out of 10 rating.
What's your overall?
Or and my star rating.
Because you have Letterboxd, yeah.
I have 2. I would give it the same as Halloween. 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5. For different reasons, but that's what I say. I say go... I recommend as well.
Mm-hmm. All right.
What's your rating?
Anything? Oh, yeah. So, sorry, what was your rating again?
It was an 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. I might go a little bit lower. I might go a 7 out of 10 just because... Okay. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that's my overall rating.
All right.
In general, though, it's...
Do you recommend?
100% recommend this movie. It's a fun family flick if you want to watch it with your mom, your dad, whatever. It's just like a cheesy, good, great... really nostalgic horror movie. It's a
great monster movie.
Yeah, I definitely give it a watch.
Yeah, and it's been out for almost like 30 years.
Yeah, it's Kevin Bacon.
And that's still, I think it holds up. And that's
surprisingly, yeah. We were like watching it in the beginning of it. We're like, these shots, like we were kind of criticizing the wide shots later, but in the beginning of it, you see these big, great shots of the desert. I was like,
yeah,
this is actually really good.
Yeah, and it's that's people, and then also the design of the monster is just you everything feels real and grounded, and it's still fun and enjoyable, and I think it's something that everyone should view.
Okay.
And
wrapping up.
Yep, this was the episode of another horrible podcast.
All right.
I hope it was as horrible as it was for us.
I hope you guys
was for you.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Yes, we will be out next week with the suggestion.
Oh yeah. Stay tuned to the end of the podcast. We're gonna have an outro, and you get to see what I suggest for Mitchell.
All right. But as you are, everyone stay horrible.
All right.
And happy.
Love you guys. Bye.
Bye. All right. Welcome to the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you loved it. I hope you We're having a good time.
I hope you're excited for the end of it.
And this is the most exciting part of the episode, where we get to suggest the next movie we watch. So, if you do not remember, in the beginning of the episode, we picked animated horror movies, and Kyle will be suggesting an animated horror film for me to watch. Now, just to be clear, it doesn't have to be something that Kyle has watched before, but sometimes it is. But just so you know, like, sometimes you think, oh, we're suggesting a movie I've already saw. It can be any movie. Just, you know, sometimes we might have not seen it, and it would be our first viewing, so that's going to be interesting. But for now, Kyle, what movie are you suggesting me to watch?
All right.
This week?
Produced by Robert Zemeckis' Image Movers and Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment. It was theatrically released by Columbia Pictures. The 2006 animated classic, Monster House.
Ooh.
This movie is about a couple of friends that start to notice some strange things about the house across the street, and they figure out what's going on.
Ah, yes. I'm very familiar with Monster House.
Yeah.
I'm excited to watch it. I haven't seen it in a while. Mm-hmm. That should be fun.
Yeah. All right.
All right. And stay horrible. And stay happy. And stay happy.